In the high-stakes world of business, some decisions don't just, hit the bottom line. They can actually land you in a courtroom. So today, we're going to get into criminal liability and figure out when a really bad day at the office actually turns into a crime.
I mean, think about it. It's a question most of us never even consider, right? You go to work, you make choices, you're just trying to get ahead. But what happens when all that pressure to succeed pushes someone right over a legal line they didn't even know existed?
Because, let's be real, most of us don't think of our office jobs as, potential crime scenes. But the reality? Oh, the reality is that executives can and do get sentenced to real jail time. And companies, they can be hit with absolutely massive fines when business laws get broken. The stakes are just way higher than you might think.
So, what kind of crime are we really talking about here? I mean, this isn't your typical street crime. No. This is something way more subtle.
This is what's known as white-collar crime. And the key words you really got to lock onto here are deceit and violation of trust. See, these aren't crimes of violence. These are crimes of the mind, cooked up for one big reason: financial gain.
Yep, these offenses are committed with a laptop and a spreadsheet, not a weapon. And the setting? Well, it looks just like your office. It's deceptively familiar, and honestly, that's what makes this whole thing so disarming and so incredibly dangerous.
So why do people do it? Well, yeah, of course, a simple desire for more money, that's a huge factor. But a lot of the time, it's actually more complex than that. It can be rooted in fear, like the fear of losing money or losing your reputation, or even just that desperate need to hide the fact that your department isn't doing as well as everyone thinks. Okay, to make this a bit more concrete, let's dive into some of the most infamous types of white-collar crime out there.
First up, we've got the Ponzi scheme. You've heard of it, right? It's basically a house of cards built on a really simple, crooked premise. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You promise these amazing returns to your first investors, and you actually pay them. But, and this is the key, you're only paying them by using the money from the new people you've just tricked into the scheme. It's totally 100% unsustainable.
And the poster child for the Ponzi scheme was, of course, Bernie Madoff. I mean, for 20 years, this guy ran the largest scheme in history. He was just paying out completely fake returns to this huge network of investors, all with money from brand new clients.
And when that house of cards finally came crashing down in 2008, well, the consequences were just staggering. Madoff was sentenced to over a century in prison, a pretty stark reminder of just how serious these crimes are.
All right, next on our list is embezzlement. And this one is all about breaking trust. See, just taking someone's property, that's larceny. But embezzlement, that's when you're given legal access to something valuable, like the company's bank account, and you just decide to help yourself. And for a really shocking real-world example of this, look no further than the case of Sujata Sachdeva. She was the vice president of finance at Koss Corporation, yeah, the headphone company, and she was the one entrusted with all the company's money.
So get this, over a 5-year period, she embezzled an absolutely astonishing $34 million. I mean, the sheer scale of that betrayal is just hard to wrap your head around. Unsurprisingly, she was eventually sentenced to 11 years in federal prison.
Okay, so we've seen the crimes. Now let's switch gears and talk about how the legal system actually deals with them. Because when a business law gets broken, it's not like there's just one path to justice. Turns out, there are two.
So when the justice system finally steps in, how it responds really boils down to one key thing. What is it actually trying to achieve?
And this right here is the fundamental question that splits that legal road right in two. Is the goal to punish the person who did wrong for a crime against society as a whole, or is it to compensate the victim and try to make them whole again? That single distinction, it changes everything.
Which brings us to the crucial difference between the criminal and the civil legal systems. And it all comes down to two very important words: guilty versus liable.
Okay, so here you can see the two legal worlds laid out side by side. Check out the biggest differences. In a criminal case, it's the government that sues, and the goal is punishment for a crime against society. The verdict? Guilty. But in a civil case, it's a private person or company suing to get compensation for some kind of personal harm, and the verdict there? Liable. The goals, the players, the consequences, totally different ballgames. I think a perfect example of a civil case, one we've all heard of, is that famous McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit. A woman was very badly burned and she sued the company. Now, McDonald's wasn't found guilty of a crime. No, they were found liable for her injuries, and they were ordered to pay compensation. See the difference? It was all about making the victim whole, not about sending the corporation to jail.
So, for a prosecutor to actually prove a criminal case, they have to establish two essential things. First, there's the guilty act itself, the physical crime. In Latin, they call this actus reus. But second, and this is just as important, they have to prove the guilty mind, or mens rea. They have to show that you didn't just do the act, but that you actually intended to do it.
And at the end of the day, all of these principles, the guilty act, the guilty mind, the whole burden of proof, it all gets argued and decided in a formal courtroom. This is really where the legal theory meets cold, hard reality, and where people's futures are decided.
So, we've looked at the crimes, we have looked at the courtrooms. What's the big takeaway? Why does understanding this distinction matter so much?
Well, it really all boils down to this one simple, powerful idea. Being found liable means you're probably writing a check, but being found guilty, that can mean losing your freedom. In the world of business, knowing the difference between those two outcomes, well, it's everything.
And that really leaves us with a final, tough question to think about. The pressure to succeed out there is just immense. And as business gets more and more competitive, that line between an aggressive, clever strategy and an actual criminal act, well, it can get pretty blurry. The real challenge is knowing exactly where that line is before you find yourself on the wrong side of it.